Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavad-Gita as it is, Chapter 3, Karma Yoga, Text 13. Yagya Shishtasano Santo Mujante Sarva Kilbishai Punjante Te Tvagam Papa Ye Pachantyatmakaranat. Yagya Shishta, a food taken after performance of yagya. Ashinaha, eaters. Santa, the devotees. Mujante, get relief. Sarva, all kinds of. Kilabishai, from sins. Bunjate, enjoy. Te, they, too, but. Agam, grievous sins. Papa, sinners. Ye, who. Pachanti, prepare food. Atmakaranat, for sense enjoyment. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. Purport: the devotees of the Supreme Lord, or the persons who are in Krishna consciousness, are called santas, and they are always in love with the Lord, as it is described in the Brahma Samhita 538. Premanjana churita bhakti valochanena santa sadaiva hridayeshu valokayanti yam shama sundana machenta gunasarupam govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. The santas, being always in a compact of love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, the giver of all pleasures, or Mukunda, the giver of liberation, or Krishna, the all-attractive person, cannot accept anything without first offering it to the Supreme Person. Therefore, such devotees always perform yagyas and different modes of devotional service, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Archanam, etc. And these performances of yagyas keep them always aloof from all kinds of contamination of sinful association in the material world. Others who prepare food for self or sense gratification are not only thieves, but also the eaters of all kinds of sins. How can a person be happy if he is both a thief and sinful? It is not possible. Therefore, in order for people to become happy in all respects, they must be taught to perform the easy process of Sankirtan Yagya in full Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there can be no peace or happiness in the world. So we're on Chapter 3, Text 13, for those of you who have just joined us. And text one more time. Yagya Shishtashano Santo Mujante Sarva Kilbishai Ujante Te Tvagam Papa Ye Pachantyat Makaranat. Alright. So the Bhagavatam gives the analogy that the human form of life is like a boat. It's a boat to cross over the ocean of nescience. The human form is considered the superior form to all other lower animal, plant life, aquatic life, etc., because the humans have a special inherent intelligence where they can discuss knowledge and philosophy. And that intelligence was actually given as a gift from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, primarily to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But unfortunately, people use that superior intelligence in so many variety of mundane material activities. And you could see how the dogs cannot speak, they cannot have a lengthy conversation with language and words from a dictionary. They cannot build buildings or drive cars, but the humans can do all these things. They can record things on the television, etc., because that intelligence is higher, but it's misdirected. So this human form is compared to the boat, and the spiritual master is compared to the captain of the boat. Because the humans have two births. They have one birth from the mother, and then their next birth is from the spiritual master, who is the eternal Father. And it says that the Vedas, the Shastra, is actually the favorable winds, that the spiritual master knows how to take advantage of the favorable winds to help that boat, that human form, to cross the ocean of nescience. And we notice on a boat, the thing that makes it steer one way or another is actually in the back. You have a whole big boat, and in the very back you have a very small little part called the rudder. It's not big at all. It's the size of this table is probably maybe even bigger, or probably about the same size as a rudder for a really big boat. And this rudder can be compared to the tongue. It actually even kind of looks like the tongue a little bit. It's shaped like a tongue. So depending on which way you control the rudder is going to depend which way that boat is going to go. So if you control the rudder correctly, that boat will get you to your destination. So in the same way, yoga actually begins with the tongue. If you can control the tongue, you can actually control all your other senses, and therefore take full advantage of the human form of life. And we sing every day, at least twice a day, a prayer by Bhakti-yoga Thakur, unless you're fasting for the day. Sharira Vijaja. And there's a joke I've heard devotees say, but could be relevant. I've heard people say that there's one mantra for sleeping. If anybody hears this mantra, they'll fall asleep. And this mantra is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Because when everybody's sitting down ready to hear a class, sometimes the tendency is that somehow your brain malfunctions and your eyes get heavy and you fall asleep. But there's one mantra that wakes everybody up. It's Sharira Vijaja, because everybody is happy to take prasadam, and that nobody falls asleep during prasadam. So this yajna is not difficult. It's actually very easy. You don't have to give up anything except for completely gross, disgusting things that are abominable to eat anyways. But you can eat everything else, and you just offer it to the Supreme before you eat it. It says here that you become free from all sorts of sins, because even if you're a vegetarian, but you do not offer your food to Krishna, it is still sinful. That's why in the last sentence the last 4 words of this verse, it says, they verily eat only sin. Verily means it's either more or less sinful. Of course, if we eat abominable things like dead carcasses in the form of animals, that's extremely sinful, especially the cow. But if you're a vegetarian, it's still sinful, but it's less sinful than eating the animal. But we are not necessarily vegetarians. We're prasadam-atarians. We take prasadam. And I remember Srila Prabhupada, I heard, made the point that we're not concerned with being vegetarians, but Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita, Patram pushpam palam tuayam, yo me bhakti-yoga pranashati, that if one offers me a leaf, a fruit, a flower, or water, I will accept it very happily. So Prabhupada was making the point that we are actually only interested in pleasing Krishna. And so now we know what pleases Krishna is fruit and milk and things like that the Bhagavad-Gita explained. So that's why we eat those things. If Krishna would to say, he wouldn't say that because he doesn't like it, but if he were to say, offer me meat, then we would do that because we're following Krishna. But obviously, he doesn't want that to happen. He doesn't enjoy those things. So, a person who eats for personal sense enjoyment, he verily eats only sin. And the whole idea, what a boomerang is? Everybody knows. It's like a sort of, I guess you could call it like a toy, like a children's toy. It's shaped in a certain way that when you throw it, and somehow or another it's designed that it goes and somehow it turns around and it comes back to you and you're supposed to catch it. It's called a boomerang. So that's kind of like action. When you throw the action out, it comes back to you in the form of a reaction. So that's only if you perform action for personal sense enjoyment. It's like a boomerang. But when you offer that boomerang to Krishna, you offer that action to Krishna, instead of it coming back to you, Krishna catches it. And then you're playing with Krishna instead of trying to play with yourself and try to enjoy yourself. So self-enjoyment, this whole consciousness of I want to be the enjoyer, is sinful. It's a sin. And one definition of sin is in archery. Do you know what archery is? It's when, like bow and arrow. People do it for sport sometimes. They have like a target. They're trying to hit the middle, the bullseye. And so they're shooting the arrows. In archery, actually, if you miss the target, then the referee or whatever, they say sin. It actually means that you missed the target. That's in archery. So same thing applies, is a sin is when you miss the target, when you miss the point. So the human form of life, being specifically designed to go back home, back to Godhead, if we identify ourselves with the body and we're more concerned with personal sense enjoyment than going back to Godhead, then it's missing the point. It's a sin. You missed the target. Just like if you were driving in a vehicle and you started identifying with the vehicle, and you lost track that actually I'm driving this vehicle to get to a destination so I can perform important duties, that you got sidetracked and you thought that the goal of life was to fill up your tank full of gas and just drive around and look at the nice scenery, then you have missed the point. You have sinned. So this human form of life is also a responsibility because this human form, you get sinful reactions. The animals and the plants, they do not get sinful reactions. They're actually playing out their bad karma in their animal life. They're burning up their bad karma. Similarly, also with the heavenly planets or the hellish planets, if you're in heaven, you do not get any reaction to your activities. You're actually just burning up your pious karma. And when that pious karma is burnt up, then you come back to this Martyaloka, middle planetary system, or that's where we are on Earth. Similarly, in the hellish planets, you do not get any reaction. You're just burning up your sinful karma, and then similarly, when that gets burned up, you come back here. So this middle planetary system is actually like a pivotal point, like a pivot point from where you prepare to go next. Just like in America, we have public transportation, or like buses, like city buses. What happened? I don't know if you guys have that in India. I know you guys have trains and everything. I don't know how that works, but the idea is a bus. What it does is it stops at certain areas throughout the city, and if you're at that specific area, that means you need to hop on the bus. So the bus all day, the driver's duty, his job, he gets paid for it. He stops at different locations. People get on the bus, and he takes them to their destination. So at the end of the day, all those buses throughout the city, there's many of them, they all meet back at one place where all the buses park. And then in the next day, they all kind of veer out and they go to their specific destinations. So in the same way, this earthly realm is like that bus station that you start off there and you go to your specific destinations. When your karma is burnt up, you come back to that bus terminal, final destination place. So, basically, I was just trying to make the point that this human form is the only form that we get. This in the earthly middle planetary system, the human form is the only form that we get karma, that we're actually responsible for activities. Animals do not get karma because the humans actually have the capacity to control their mind and control their senses. It's a liability, responsibility. Just like I heard Prabhupada give the example that when you're at a person's house and you're a guest in their house, and you see nice food on their table, you don't just go up to the table and just start eating the food, without permission. That's not what people normally do. First of all, most of the time you probably wouldn't even ask, but even if you had the audacity to ask, you would politely ask, "I'm very hungry. Would it be okay if I had some of that nice food stuff on your table?" But a dog, on the other hand, would not ask, or would not even have the capacity to think that maybe he should ask. He just goes straight up to the table and he eats everything, because the animals, they don't have the capacity to control their senses and their mind. They're not liable for that. They're not responsible for that. So these we have in the human form these 4 regulative principles. We're on chapter 3, text 13. Do you know that verse? Are you familiar with that verse? We're talking about eating food only meant for sacrifice. Anything else is sinful. This is what Krishna says. So that's what I'm in the middle of trying to describe. These 4 regulative principles: no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, no meat eating. It says that if you don't follow these regulative principles, you're not even considered a human. The reason for this statement is what I was just explaining, is that if you cannot control your senses, just like the humans have the responsibility they should be doing, and the animals do not have the responsibility, if you do not take that responsibility and control your senses, you are no better than an animal. You're just living a polished animal life. You're basically living according to the pullings of your senses, and your basic activities are the four basic activities of animal life, which is eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But the humans, they do it in a more elaborate way. You know, the dog will eat anything you throw to it on the street, but the human beings, they use fork and knives. They sit at a dinner table with their family. The cow will just sleep on the sand or the dirt. We sleep on nice beds. And what is it? Mating. You know, you see the monkeys. Sometimes you see the monkeys mating just anywhere. But the humans, they have a nice house, and they work to have nice sex life, and eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. The animals just defend with their claws or their teeth. We have big rockets and nuclear bombs and armies, military. So these are all just the four basic propensities of animal life, just more in a polished way. And if you look at material civilization, that's all that's going on. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, just in a very sophisticated way. That's all that's going on. So if we're not following these regulative principles for the sake of elevating our consciousness, then that's why that statement says that you are no better than an animal. Just like Shabdev, the Bhagavatam says, Nayan deha deha bhajam na loke kashtam karmam ahate ved bhujam ye. That he's telling his sons, preaching to his sons, that now you've attained this human form of life. Don't just simply eat, sleep, mate, and defend, which is available even for the hogs and the dogs that eat stool. So don't be just as good as the hogs and dogs that eat stool, because when you leave your body, which is inevitable, you will have to maybe take on that form of life as a hog that eats stool. I don't know if it's in this Bhagavad-Gita, but because there's many different types, kind of versions of the Bhagavad-Gita, in the sense that there's different artwork and stuff like that. Oh yeah, this does have it. This has part of it. There's another page that shares a similar thing. This shows a person who is fond of sex life and exposing their body, and they are preparing their consciousness in their next life to take the form of a tree, because the tree can stand naked for like a long time. You know, their whole life they're just naked for many years. And I actually have a quick story. I won't get too distracted, but I was distributing books one time at a university in Arizona. It's in the United States of America. It's one area, and they had cactus there. Do you know what cactus is? It's a type of plant. I'm sure you have it here in India, but maybe it's called something else. It's a type of plant that just grows. It doesn't have any leaves. It just kind of grows straight, sometimes a little bit curved, and they have like pointed spikes coming out like needles. I was walking, as I was distributing books, there was some cactus, and I happened to look over, and I saw this cactus. It freaked me out. It looked exactly like a human. Exactly like a human. It was almost scary. It had a nose, it had eyes, it had a mouth. The branches were arms. And I thought it was fake at first. I thought maybe it was a sculpture, someone did some artwork. I got closer, it was the real thing. It was kind of sad, a soul stuck in that body. So this is a picture of that here. And then we have this picture on the bottom, someone who likes to sleep a lot. And what animal likes to sleep a lot is the bear. The bear hibernates for many months out of the year. So if you're in the mode of ignorance, then you might have to take birth as a bear. And I had this one saying one time, sometimes I like to make little small poems, Krishna conscious poems. And I was thinking that in your service, if you do not strive to do big, then you'll fall in the mode of ig and take birth as a pig. So if you're not trying to do big things for Krishna, you'll fall in the mode of ignorance, and you might have to take birth as a pig. But what happened in the other Bhagavad-Gita, there was another picture sharing the same thing of a person who liked to eat meat. And what types of animals like to eat meat? Many of them. But in this particular picture, it was showing a tiger. So this man had to take birth as a tiger. And there was another picture, I kind of forgot what it was. So the whole idea is that Krishna actually prescribes certain types of food for certain living entities. Isha vasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatam jagat tanam tyaktanam bhujita yes ma grihas. Yeah, Ishopanishad verse 1. Thank you. I forgot the last one. I can't hear you. Anyways, the whole idea is that Krishna gives the living entities everything they need to subsist, to live, and there is a complete illusion that we are brainwashed to believe ever since we were kids, that we need to eat meat for protein. It is necessary to live, that you have to eat dead carcasses, otherwise you won't be healthy, which is completely false, bogus. And one of the things I tell people is this point, that the Supreme gave us the exact thing, the exact food that we need, every living entity needs to maintain and be healthy. And I make the point that actually, if you think about it, some of the biggest animals are vegetarians. Not only vegetarians, they eat very, very simple food. Like the cow and the bull, they eat grass. The giraffe, the giraffe with long neck, they just eat, like things from the tree, leaves and fruits. Or the rhinoceros, the gorillas. Gorillas are huge and strong. These are all vegetarians. So it's a complete illusion that we actually need to eat something that's prescribed for other living entities. Meat is prescribed for tigers and lions and bears and sharks and things of that nature. So this whole idea is that Krishna will actually give the living entity everything he needs to stay healthy. And Prabhupada makes the point that the humans work so hard just to have a little sex life, to have a little shelter, to eat a little food. And he makes the point that we work for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. But even the more you work, or even if you were rich and had a lot of money, you still do not eat more than the poor person. You still do not sleep more. You still do not have more sex life. You have the same thing that the dog on the street has. The dog has a shelter, the dog has food, the dog has a family. So in the same way, Krishna provides for everybody, just like the birds. There's a nest in the temple. The chandeliers. We got 3 chandeliers, one in front of each set of deities, Gaura Nitai, Krishna, Balaram, Shri Radha, Shyam Sundar. In front of Gaura Nitai, in the chandelier, there's a nest, a bird's nest. And I see the bird had babies in the nest. I kind of have like a relationship with those birds because I saw when it first came, and every day I could see the mommy or the daddy bird going out and work and bringing back the sticks that build its little house, bringing back food for the little babies. So those birds, they don't work so much. They just get simple things. They get a few things to eat, and they have the rest of their time to do whatever they do. So one time, there was this person who was kind of like interviewing Srila Prabhupada, and he asked Prabhupada, do the devotees have jobs? Do they work? And Prabhupada's response to that was, why should we work? Why should we have to work? We're servants of the Supreme Controller. He provides everything. And this was at, I think this was in the United Kingdom at a big temple they have, Bhaktivedanta Manor. So when he asked Prabhupada, do you work? And then Prabhupada responded, why should we? We're servants of the Supreme Controller. He pointed to the temple, and he said this temple is worth hundreds and thousands of dollars. And then he asked this person who was interviewing him, even if you worked your whole life, do you think you would have enough money to buy this property? And the person said, no. And he said, see, and Srila Prabhupada said, see, this is true intelligence, that we don't have to work hard like the hogs and dogs, but we depend on the Supreme Controller, who's the richest person in all of existence, and he gives us everything. Just like on a morning walk in Denver, Colorado, it's somewhere in the United States, Prabhupada made a similar point. You can watch it, it's on YouTube. He's walking with the devotees on the morning walk, and he was kind of saying, wow, this is like, he was saying how nice the park is. It's a very nice park. There's so much grass, and it's a nice place to walk. He said, but we're the only ones in the park. And he said, see, this is true intelligence. He said that the mouse or the gopher, he works so hard to dig a hole in the ground to make it his home. But the snake just kind of hangs out and relaxes. And then once the gopher or the mouse or whatever is done making its home, the snake goes in the hole, has a nice lunch, eats the gopher, and it has a nice home. Has a hole to live in. So he said that we can use material civilization for our purpose of serving Krishna and understanding it's all energy from Krishna, so we can also enjoy this nice park also that everybody else in the city actually paid for, but their taxes, because they're not surrendered to Krishna, they have to labor hard working for Maya, and they bought a very nice park for us. So thank you very much. And that's what Prabhupada was explaining to on that morning walk. And it's kind of funny because this happened in Denver, Colorado. Prabhupada said this, and we have a nice temple in Denver, ISKCON temple. And one time, I've been there quite a few times, but this one particular time, it was in the middle of the Warp Tour. So what the Warp Tour is, it no longer exists. The person stopped running it, but it was a rock and roll concert tour, like music tour, that would go all over the United States. And Parameshvar, for I think 12 or 13 years, followed the whole tour, distributing books at the concerts. And it's really a yajna. A lot of times it's really hot. You work 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day sometimes, maybe more. But it's intense because it's so fast-paced. you're talking to one person after another, and then at the end of it, you have to drive most of the time for hours to get to the next concert, and then start again early in the morning, 7:30 or 8 in the morning, and you work all day long distributing books, and then again, you get in the van, you got to drive. So it's constant endeavor. It's hard work. Plus on top of that, and you work like maybe 5-6 days straight, you get 1 day off, and it's not even really a day off, because the day off means you have to clean the van, you have to drive to get more books to put it in the van, you have to do so many things. Anyways, the point I was trying to make was we had 1 day off after a long, many days out in the hot sun working hard, and the day off happened to be in Colorado, in Denver. So we stopped by the temple, and we're all kind of wiped out, and we only get to be at the temple for a few hours for the morning program, for prasadam. Then immediately we have to drive really far to get books, and then drive again really far to the next concert for the next day. So we're working really hard, and I'm in front of the temple. I'm talking to one devotee, just having a quick conversation, I forget about what, but someone drives by the temple and they shout out the window, "Get a job, you lazy bum," to me and my friend. And I was just kind of thinking, not to be like arrogant or anything, but I was thinking, I probably work two or three times harder than this guy, that just told me to get a job, you lazy bum. So it's unfortunate that many people, when they think of spiritual life, they think it's you're just living at the cost of others, like a parasite. But that's actually not the case. We are meant to work hard for Krishna's pleasure. Prabhupada made the statement that the brahmachari should work so hard that when he lays down at night, he immediately falls asleep because of his hard work, and he gets 6-7 hours of rest, and he wakes up and he works hard again. So this is kind of like the expectation for us in this Krishna conscious movement. No crazies or lazies. No crazies or lazies. And maybe some of us are a little bit crazy, but not too crazy, insane, and not too lazy either, that you just don't do anything. Obviously, we need a little bit of balance, a little bit of leisure time, and not overwork ourselves. So, in this purport, Prabhupada makes this statement that the devotees of the Supreme Lord, or the persons who are in Krishna consciousness, are called santas. And santas are the devotees, or saint. This is where the word saint comes from, santa. And in America, or at least in California, there are many cities who were actually founded by great Catholic saints. And even the names of the cities are like Santa Barbara, Santa Monica, Santa Cruz, San Francisco. So these were all named after saints, Saint Francisco and many others. San Diego. Los Angeles actually means the angels. Los in Spanish means the, Angeles, angels, the angels. So actually this world, everywhere we look, is a Krishna conscious world if we have the vision. Even in the material world, you can actually be in Vaikuntha if you have the Vaikuntha vision, that everything's connected with Krishna. So this word Santa, I remember hearing a pastime from I think it was Amala Bhakta Swami Maharaj, one sannyasi, Prabhupada disciple. He lives in Los Angeles. But he said that when the devotees read this back in the 70s, they read the word, the devotees are supposed to be santas, and they had this idea that in December every year we have the Srila Prabhupada book distribution marathon, and they thought, well, if the devotees are supposed to be santas, Does everybody here know who Santa Claus is? Santa Claus. No. Yes. Santa Claus, you know. So, and you know what he looks like? Or at least with big fat guy with the white. So when the devotees read this, they had the idea that we can dress up like Santas, like Santa Claus, and distribute books. And they're actually very effective. They would wear, like, you know, the beard and the hat, and they would ring a bell and say, we're trying to do good things for this world by whatever, you know, spreading love of God. And they were actually very successful. And later, in the same sentence, Prabhupada said, okay, the devotees are called santas, and they're always in love with the Lord, as it is described in the Brahma Samhita. Premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena santa sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti. So, premanjana, anjana means like ointment. So when the devotee's eyes are smeared with the ointment of love of God, they can actually, this verse in Brahma Samhita is describing, they could see their Lord everywhere, Shama Sundar. And this is the santas being always in a compact of love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So actually wanting Krishna to enjoy instead of having us enjoy was the whole primary focus of this verse, that you offer your food in sacrifice. And yajna, another word for Vishnu, is yajna. That's actually one of his names. And yajna means for his pleasure. Yagartha karmano nyatra lokayam karma bandhanaha, that you should offer everything to yajna, and anything else binds one further to the actions and reactions of this material world. So I remember my first 1 or 2 years practicing devotional service. One of my services at my home temple was I got the great privilege to wash the deity's plates after the evening arti. And it was a very amazing service. I really appreciated it a lot because I wasn't then Brahminically initiated, so I was not allowed on the altar. So I felt like this was a great opportunity that I got to do some service for the deities. So yeah, they had me take the prasadam off the plates, the 3 plates for Gaur Nitai, Rukmini Dwarkadish, and Jagannath Baladev and Subhadra. And I put the prasadam in a little container, and I washed all the plates. Now what would happen was the people that worked, the devotees working in the pujari room, would always know what time the plates would come off the altar. So people in the pujari room, they get a special benediction that they get to go and they get to pick whatever prasadam they like. So devotees would come and they'd do that. But I remember this one senior Mataji, she's a very saintly person. She's been living there for almost 40 years. And she would come, and instead of taking the prasadam herself, she would stand there and just be looking at the plates with all the prasadam on it. And I would ask her, would you like to take some? And she's like, no, I'm okay, I already had something earlier. And she would do this quite frequently. And then most of the time I would ask her, would you like to take some? Because everybody else was doing. And then finally one day she said, no, I just really like, I get inner satisfaction, because I was wondering, why is she looking and she doesn't take anything? And then she explained one day, I get an inner satisfaction just seeing what Krishna enjoyed. I just want to see what Krishna enjoyed. And she just look at the halava and look at the pakoras and the sabji. And this really impressed me, how detached she was, that she was actually in a deep meditation, that this is actually what Krishna ate personally. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considered the prasadam of the deity just like in the mood of the gopis, that he's actually, kissing Krishna, because Krishna touched that food to his lips, and now I get to touch it to my lips. That's obviously a high platform, but at least we can follow in the footsteps and remember that actually Krishna enjoyed this food. You see videos of Srila Prabhupada when he honored prasadam. He did it very meticulously. He had no music going on, nothing going on. A lot of the times he'd be facing a wall. A wall would be in front of him. He wouldn't want to have anybody talk to him. He'd be left alone. And sometimes, to the side, they videotaped him. We have some footage, and he'd just be meditating on the prasadam. It took him a long time, about a half hour, to honor the prasadam. So it's a deep meditation. We can also, as we read Krishna book and read the pastimes of Krishna, we can see who's cooking for Krishna. And Mother Yashoda, Srimati Radharani, Mother Yashoda's associates are helping her. Mother Yashoda's boiling milk. So in the same way, we can correlate that with what's going on in the pujari room. Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu is the head cook for the deities, and he has people helping out. Yes, maybe he asks some devotees, can you bring me this, or can you stir this while I take care of this preparation? So this is actually preparing our mind, preparing our mind, or meditating on what's actually happening in the spiritual world. That this is actually, as the first days we come to Krishna consciousness, we're actually being trained up in full surrender in what's going on in the spiritual world. We're taught to follow, surrender to an authority, to be humble, to get along with devotees, and Prabhupada makes the point that the impersonalists, it's very, very difficult to be an impersonalist, a transcendentalist practicing impersonalism or voidism or whatever, even if you're a Brahmanvadi, even if you're not offensive to Krishna, but you just prefer the Brahman aspect of the Supreme Truth, you still don't get, it's not the highest thing, because meditation is meant for, like the Ashtanga Yoga meditation, it's actually, it's a means to an end. You're actually doing that to purify your mind, to eventually come to the platform of surrendering to Krishna. Whereas devotional service, even as a brand new bhakta, a brand new devotee, we're actually engaged in the topmost yoga. There's even a book, it's called the Krishna Consciousness, the topmost yoga. Because instead of doing the preliminary activities of meditation and trying to control your senses and everything like that through Ashtanga Yoga process, we're actually directly engaged in activities that are going on in the spiritual world. Whether we know it or not, that's just a matter of realization and a matter of maturity. So this whole idea of offering your food to Krishna, this is actually what Mother Yashoda is doing. It's a very high platform. I remember one devotee I was traveling with on traveling Sankirtan. He was very senior to me, and he's kind of a Bhajananandi type of person. He does some preaching, but he's very internally absorbed, and always reading like Chaitanya Bhagavat or Venu Gita or Krishna book or some sort of Leela. He's always absorbed. He loves it. But anyways, he would offer the food, and one time I kind of caught him in his absorption, and I don't think he meant for me to see him, but he was like doing all these like hand gestures, almost like and his eyes were closed, almost like he was imagining, like it seemed to me that he was like feeding Krishna, like with his hands. That's what I kind of imagine. And it just, when I saw that, I don't know if that's exactly what he was doing, but that's what I pictured he was doing. Then it kind of occurred to me how amazing every little aspect of devotional service is. something as simple as offering water to a picture of the deities is so exalted. This is what's going on in Goloka Vrindavan. So Prabhupada goes on to say that the santas, the devotees, they're always in a compact of love with Supreme Personality Godhead Govinda, which in parentheses he says, the giver of all pleasures. So go in Sanskrit means a few things. It could mean a cow, cows. It could also mean senses. You can be a godas, you can be a servant of the cow, or a servant of your senses. But we're supposed to be Goswami, master of the senses. But go could mean cow, senses. It can also mean land, the land. So Govinda is the giver of pleasure to the senses, giver of pleasure to the cows, giver of pleasure to the land of Vrindavan. Mukunda, Prabhupada says, or Mukunda, the giver of liberation. I was just reading in Bhagavatam in a purport, Prabhupada explained that Kunda is also a type of flower, and Mukha, right, means face. So in this purport, Prabhupada was saying that Mukunda can also mean the one who has like a lotus-like face, or like a Kunda-like face, which is Krishna. And then he says, or Krishna, the all-attractive person. And the devotees cannot accept anything without first offering it to the Supreme Person. Therefore, such devotees always perform yagyas in the form of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Archanam. So these are yagyas, they're sacrifices. Shravanam, or sacrificing our hearing, our attention, our concentration. Kirtanam, we're sacrificing our energy to chant, to speak. So we're sacrificing our body, our mind, our life, our words, our soul, our whole existence to serve the Yajna Purusha, Krishna. And then he goes on to say, others who prepare food for sense or sense gratification are not only thieves, but are also the eaters of all kinds of sins. How can a person be happy if he is both a thief and sinful? There's this analogy given that if a few thieves, they go and they steal things out of someone's house, and then they run away, and they were successful, they did not get caught, then they all got together and they said, so let's divide all these things fairly. And so the analogy is, how can you divide things that are unfairly taken in a fair way? How can you divide it in a fair way? So in the same way, people of this world, they do not know, they don't have information that what they're doing is actually thievery. They're stealing what belongs to the Supreme Person without recognizing who it comes from. And then they want to divide it equally. A lot of people want to divide it equally, some don't. And there's so many movements and philanthropic organizations, or even protest. Right now in America, there's big protests going on, and many of these things happen because people are saying we are being unfairly treated. We want to be fairly treated. We want to have good paying jobs. We don't want to be taken advantage of, things like this. But they don't understand that they themselves are also being unfair. They themselves are thieves, and one will never be happy, it says here, if he is a thief. And then Prabhupada goes on to say that if the world is taught this easy process of Sankirtan Yajna, the whole world will be peaceful and happy. Bhoktaram yagatapasam sarva loka maheshwaram suriram sarva bhutanam gyatvamam shantam rishyati. Prabhupada says this is the peace formula, that we recognize that Krishna is the controller, the supreme proprietor, the supreme friend of all living entities. And if the world just knew these few things, then there would be peace, there would be happiness, individually, collectively. Are there any questions? Somebody ask a question. You have a question? You don't have a question? Okay. Bhagavad-Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.